So here we are, let's get right into it. A deep dive into the urban legends of Fallout New Vegas. Let's start with Area 51. There's always been a lingering question about what lies beyond the game's Mojave Desert. With Area 51 just north of Las Vegas in real life, many fans wondered if it would appear in Fallout New Vegas. The New California Republic, known for occupying military outposts, might have taken over the infamous base. It would fit perfectly into the game's world. But despite all the rumours, mods and explorations, Area 51 doesn't appear to exist in the official game. Of course, there's always a non-zero chance something remains undiscovered. Though to be fair, if something were there, it would probably have been identified in the game's files. The mystery seems to be mostly resolved, but the speculation, that's never going away. Moving on, we're going to have a look at the Goodsprings Cemetery. So, the cemetery sits quietly northwest of the small town aptly named Goodsprings. It's a modest graveyard, just a collection of about 30 graves with a lone water tower nearby. The faded old-fashioned names on the headstones suggest these graves date back to the Wild West era. Signs around the area warn "Keep Out," which some players find ominous, but they're actually referring to a nearby valley swarming with giant rad scorpions. Some players have noticed that if they crank up their graphic settings, a few of the names on the tombstones become clear. Among them are Benny Lava, the Courier, and Whiskey Shakes Jr., just to name a few. It's a quirky detail, but not the only thing that makes this place memorable. Stay here long enough and you'll hear strange whispers, almost as if the cemetery itself is alive with secrets. Objects seem to move on their own, bottles or bits of trash thrown towards the player. Occasionally, players report eerie apparitions. Some believe it's a ghostly glitch, while others think something more sinister is at play. Even the grave where the Courier was meant to be buried whispers when approached, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. But maybe the spookiest thing? If you kill any NPCs in Goodsprings, their bodies might vanish and reappear in the cemetery, as if the game itself is making sure the dead return to their rightful place. Next, we move on to Lone Wolf Radio. It's a spot filled with eerie rumours that stretch far beyond the game's official lore. The Radio Shack south of Goodsprings was initially meant to host a far darker character, the Lone Wolf. According to early designs, this deranged figure would broadcast his insane rants at random times of the day. Then, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd return to the airwaves with a child, a different one every night. Each broadcast would end in the same chilling way, with him declaring, "Everyone is gone, you're all alone, let it all end," followed by the ending of the child live on air. Now, of course, I might have pulled your leg a little bit there. That disturbing storyline in the quest, which is supposedly called Little Dead Riding Hood, were never actually meant to be part of the game. Obviously, that content is incredibly shocking and would have, I don't think a game could have been marketed with that. But it was the subject of a creepypasta that went around back in the day. Closer to when the game was originally out. But that being said, Lone Wolf Radio is still a pretty creepy location anyway, and obviously that was what inspired that creepypasta. However, that doesn't dispel some of the legends and rumours. Apparently, more than just the obvious traces of the Lone Wolf remain. Seemingly, hidden whispers can sometimes be heard beneath the static of the radio, if you're lucky enough to tune the ham radios just right. The graffiti scrawled inside the shack reads, "Everyone is gone, I am all alone, let it all end." And some say the ghosts of dismembered NCR soldiers from nearby Prim can be spotted, though evidence is as elusive as the Lone Wolf himself. The myth has a life of its own, amplified by players, mods, and the unsettling atmosphere that the shack cultivates. Near Goodsprings, the tribal village looks like a typical wasteland campsite at first glance, but doesn't take long for things to feel off. Scattered around the area are multiple corpses labelled as burned body, though many don't appear to be burned at all. The strange part? These bodies don't always stay where they are. Fallout New Vegas is known for its glitches, and this area seems particularly prone to them. Items and bodies sometimes clip through the ground, leading to bizarre movements that unnerve even seasoned players. The backstory of these bodies is explained in the Fallout novel All Roads. The village was Great Khan's territory before a group of fiends attacked, one armed with a flamethrower. This ties into the burned label, but there's more to the myth than just storytelling. Some players claim to have witnessed a burned body rising from the dead, becoming hostile, though the exact cause remains unclear. Perhaps it's a glitch, but the unsettling encounters have continued to circulate, further blurring the line between technical errors and supernatural events. Adding to the mystery, there are faint whispers and occasional sightings of apparitions in the village. These reports are scarce and hard to verify, but they're enough to keep the legend alive. What's clear is that this place feels wrong in a way that can't entirely be explained away by coding errors. The tribal village myth overlaps with another tragic figure in the Mojave, Chance. A Great Khan raider, Chance was one of the few survivors of the Bitter Springs massacre, an event that scarred him deeply. The trauma pushed him into a spiral of something addiction. I'm trying to think of a way to put that won't trigger the algorithm. And his mental state deteriorated with each passing day. The mere sight of fire would reportedly send him into a violent rage, a side effect of witnessing his friends and fellow Khans burn during the massacre. As was discussed earlier on, the Fallout novel All Roads explains the story. During the journey, the group encountered the Fiends and they attacked the tribal village. When Chance saw the flames, he lost control. Armed with just a knife, he plunged into that chaos, fighting with almost superhuman fury. By the time the battle ended, the entire village was in ruins, and he died shortly after and was buried not far from the village. Which takes us to the grave. So players have theorised that Chance's grave is a sign of a deeper, spookier mystery. Some believe his restless spirit lingers connected to the strange happenings around the village. His knife, aptly named Chance's knife, can be found in the game, a powerful weapon tied to his memory. But the myth goes further, suggesting that Chance's rage and grief live on, manifesting in the paranormal activity reported around the village. Moving on, we're going to have a look at Camp Forlorn Hope, which carries a name that says it all. It's a bleak outpost, constantly under threat from Legion raids and surrounded by the grim realities of war. Even if the player manages to improve the camp by completing the quest lines, most of the soldiers defending it are likely dead by the end. The place never really feels like it's winning. The hospital within the camp adds to the grim atmosphere, where failure to have the right skills can result in gory, unavoidable deaths. The camp's unsettling reputation doesn't stop with its bleak, war-torn environment. The cemetery inside the camp is said to be haunted, similar to Goodsprings. Players have reported hearing strange whispers while walking among the graves, and objects like bottles seem to move without explanation. Some believe a poltergeist may be responsible, though evidence is scarce. The whispers, some say, are also heard inside the hospital if the player fails the medical side quest, adding another layer of unease to the already grim setting. While physical sightings of ghosts are rare, a handful of players have claimed to see shadowy figures or misidentified NCR soldiers in the mist. Investigations into the paranormal activity at Camp Forlorn Hope have led to little concrete evidence, but the myth remains strong. It's not hard to believe that a place with so much death would have something left behind. Something more than just the memories of fallen soldiers. And now we're going to move from ghostly to cryptozoological. After raising a bomber from the depths of Lake Mead during the quest Volare, Radio New Vegas starts broadcasting curious reports. They talk of a mysterious creature lurking in the waters, spotted by wastelanders shortly after the bomber's appearance. Most people dismiss these stories, assuming the so-called Lake Mead monster is simply the plane itself. But that hasn't stopped some from digging deeper. Myth hunters and adventurers alike have since scoured the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supposed beast. Though no one has definitively found the monster, rumours still swirl about something strange beneath the water surface. Whether it's a creature mutated by radiation or just a figment of overactive imaginations, the myth has taken on a life of its own. The Lake Mead monster continues to be a point of fascination for those who crave the unknown, with each new report adding a fresh layer to the mystery. Next, we're going to have a look at Nellis Air Force Base, which, if you look it up in real life history, you'll see that there is a few legends about hauntings there. So when players discovered the base in New Vegas, it didn't take long for similar myths to emerge. The belief was that Obsidian added an Easter egg to memorialise certain tragedies, sparking investigations into a potential ghost haunting the base. Most of the base is bustling with activity and no obvious signs of paranormal occurrences exist in the hangars or living quarters, but in the northern section there's a small graveyard, an unremarkable spot that many believe could be home to the ghost. Similar to other graveyards in the game, whispers of figures appearing near the graves have surfaced, though these stories remain largely unconfirmed. The lack of solid evidence hasn't stopped players from speculating, and the Nellis ghost remains a subtle but persistent myth in the game's lore. Moving on to Novak, there's a strange quest that involves tracking down the killer of Dusty McBride's Brahmin. Every night, just past midnight, gunfire rings out and another one of his herd is found dead. The culprit turns out to be a nightkin suffering from psychological damage due to the overuse of stealth boys, a common issue among the super mutants in the Mojave. Dusty's neighbour, Nobark Noonan, claims that the killer isn't a mutant, but rather a legendary cryptid, the Chupacabra. Nobark's tale doesn't quite match up with the facts, but his description of a two-headed, fanged beast lurking in the shadows has led some to wild speculation. He insists he saw it with his own eyes, describing an encounter where it passed right by him as he searched for a gecko hiding his treasure. While the reality is that Nobark likely saw the Nightkin, his vivid imagination has sparked further rumours. Some players even claim to have encountered a real Chupacabra in the Mojave, though most of these reports are chalked up to mods or misidentified creatures like NCR or Legion dogs. Next we have a potentially human mystery, because scattered across the wasteland players have found wounded or dead lake lurks even in remote areas where no recent conflicts seem to have occurred. These creatures, mutated from the local wildlife, are usually formidable foes, but what's puzzling is that these dead lake lurks are often missing something: their meat. Unlike normal NPC conflicts where both winners and losers leave their remains behind, these lake lurk corpses seem to have been carefully harvested, empty and clean. Players have theorised that this could be the work of an expert hunter, someone who knows how to manage a species population and uses sustainable methods. This so-called lake lurk hunter operates with precision, only taking what's needed and leaving no trace of a struggle. Their tactics suggest a deep knowledge of lake lurk physiology and perhaps even a larger purpose, whether it's scientific research or a contract for an unknown party. The mystery deepens when players find entire lake lurk egg clutches also stripped bare in nesting areas with no signs of conflict. The hunter's expertise is apparent: no plasma weapons, only conventional, but who this hunter is or why they're targeting lake lurks so methodically remains a mystery. A more technological mystery this time. Scattered throughout the Mojave, players may stumble upon terminals with an intriguing option: Lucky 38 Executive Override. The function itself seems simple enough, a piece of coding left over from a removed quest, but what it was supposed to do is pique the interest of many players. According to the game's data files, this option was originally part of a quest that involved bugging several terminals before accessing a critical one in the Lucky 38 casino. Obviously, elements of that quest remain in the game, but what makes this particularly interesting is that the option still appears in some terminals even though the quest itself, or at least this more complicated version, was scrapped. Some speculate that the override was meant to reveal a deeper secret connected to Mr. House and his control over the Mojave, perhaps unlocking hidden areas or triggering new events. Locations like Camp Golf, Helios 1 and Fortification Hill all have terminals with this option, suggesting a broader scope that was ultimately cut from the game. While mods have tried to restore this content, the full story behind this executive override remains a mystery. What was its purpose? Why was it abandoned, and how might it have changed the game's narrative? Moving on back to a creature-based mystery, or rather, not really a mystery, but it's still kinda cool. Hidden deep within Fallout New Vegas, deep in the files, is a creature more powerful than any other in the game's wasteland: Gojira. This behemoth of a monster is a scaled-up version of the fire gecko, towering over even super-mutant behemoths and boasting stats that make it virtually unbeatable. With an enormous 8,000 HP and a fire breath attack that deals an insane 3,200 damage per second, Gojira is a force of nature. Even the most powerful enemies like the legendary Deathclaw or the X-42 giant robo-scorpion fall instantly to this thing. Though it was never intended to appear in standard gameplay, Gojira can be spawned through console commands using its editor ID. It's a clear homage to the iconic Japanese kaiju Godzilla, making it an entertaining Easter egg for players who uncover its existence. And finally, we've got a really cool mystery where we're going to go back to a character we've talked about earlier on, Nobark Noonan. So, the eccentric old man in Novak, mostly known for his wild conspiracy theories and strange ramblings. You think, is that it? Well, there's a fan theory that Nobark's odd behaviour might hide a much deeper story, one that ties him to Vault 11 and even the events of Fallout 2. So we'll look at Vault 11 first. So as anyone who's played the game should know, it was the site of a horrific social experiment where the inhabitants were forced to sacrifice one of their own each year or face mass extermination. When players explore the vault, they find the bodies of 4 of the 5 final survivors who had chosen to exit the game in a voluntary fashion, if you can understand what that really means. However, one person remains unaccounted for, and that's where the theory begins. Some believe Nobark is the last survivor, having escaped the vault only to slowly lose his mind from the trauma. But the Nobark theories don't end there. Another theory suggests that he might be the chosen one from Fallout 2, the hero who saved that wasteland years earlier. The evidence? A wrecked Highwayman, the car the Chosen One famously drove, can be found near the 188 trading post, complete with nostalgic soundtrack from Fallout 2 playing as you approach. In the truck, players find energy and microfusion cells, just like the ones used to power the car. Nearby, players can also find that gun, a .223 pistol almost identical to the one from Fallout 2. So these items placed so close to Nobark's home hint that they may have once belonged to him. While the idea that Nobark is the Vault 11 survivor or even the Chosen One remain speculative, these theories add layers of possible depth to his character. So whether he's a traumatized Vault Dweller or a retired Wasteland hero, you gotta love Nobark. And there you have it. So, have I missed anything? Do you have any proof of unconfirmed mysteries that I've mentioned, or are you able to debunk the ones that I've mentioned? Let me know down below.